There are 4 parts to this activity. First of all, students will explore a dataset, becoming familiar with the variables that are contained within it. After that, they start to experiment with some software, learning some of the basic features, before using the software to investigate patterns in the data and draw some conclusions. Finally, they'll communicate their findings to the rest of their class. In this activity, students are given a chance to try exploratory data analysis by exploring real data and trying to spot and explain patterns. The activity also serves as an introduction to the free online statistics software CodeApp, a tool designed by education researchers to support students developing statistical literacy. Once familiar with the tool, you might consider embedding it into future statistics lessons using the data you have found or collected. Some important points to consider when you do this lesson with the students. Although using exploratory data analysis is well researched as an approach to developing students' statistical thinking and reasoning skills, it can be challenging for students to get started due to a lack of familiarity with the open-ended approach and with new software tools. The data set uses real data and as a consequence is intentionally messy. We recommend that you explore the data yourself before the lesson and identify features of interest. Exploratory data analysis with real data requires a shift in thinking from the more curated data sets that students and teachers more usually encounter. This activity is designed as a primer for exploratory data analysis, but students may still need significant support if this is the first time they have tried this approach in a lesson. When planning the lesson, consider carefully what additional support and prompts you may like to give your class. For example, you may prefer to demonstrate how to construct graphs in CodeApp or give specific pointers rather than allowing students a completely free hand to explore. To support students, the second part of the activity includes reference to creating nonsense graphs, allowing students an opportunity to achieve success when they break the software or produce a graph that has no obvious meaning. This kind of activity is enhanced by encouraging lots of discussion. We recommend that students work in pairs or in small groups. It is important, however, that all students have an opportunity to use the software to produce graphs. In order to support discussion and idea sharing, consider bringing the class together at regular intervals to discuss what they have noticed. Exploratory data analysis activities usually require multivariate data sets. However, this can be overwhelming to begin with. The dataset used in this activity has been chosen to look like it has lots of variables, but the only ones that are significant are location and common name. Depending on your class, you may want to direct students' attention towards these. There are only 2 locations, Scalloway and Glasgow. These were selected to provide contrasting habitats that show up as signals in the data. It is important that before working with the data, students become familiar with the similarities and differences between them in order to support their contextual reasoning. You may choose to direct students to consider what types of birds are likely to be sighted at coastal locations but not in cities, and vice versa. Also, to think about what species of birds might be sighted at both. You may also find it useful to encourage students to use the internet to read about the different bird species in the dataset before they start to investigate the data, so that they can choose to look directly at the data for species of interest. Alternatively, you may prefer to allow them to spot patterns in the data and then look up any species that stand out. The CodeApp software is flexible, and you can import any dataset as a CSV. There are also datasets and activities on the CodeApp website. Once your students have become familiar with the software in this activity, consider following it up with additional lessons using the official CodeApp activities or finding your own data of interest to your students and importing it.